Alrighty. Says I'm live. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Storino. Welcome back to the Mama Saga. And this is the channel on YouTube that you go to for all things Marvel, classic Marvel comic books, the MCU, Disney Plus as it relates to the MCU. I love this sort of stuff. I'm an attorney by day, and I am typically shooting my pre-edited stuff at night, breaking down all of this good stuff. So I can't believe we're here. This is episode 9. This is my first viewing reaction to She-Hulk episode 9, and the title is Whose Show Is This? And I kind of love where, of course, it all goes. They really pull out a lot of stops when it comes to not just the storyline where it built to here. They really threw you a hard curveball. They really did a big reveal that I was so excited that they did. I was hoping they would do. We had a couple of Chekhov's guns or open loops as early back as episode 1, but then along the way, there was at least one or two more that they did address, and we'll get there. There are quite a few interesting Easter eggs that I pulled on this first viewing too. But before I go any further, spoiler alert. So I put it in the comments down below, but if you haven't watched episode 9 yet, and or you haven't seen the entire Disney Plus series for She-Hulk Attorney at Law, I'm just crying spoilers, just want to protect you. I also put it in the comments down below during the live, and it is for the replay as well. So you're welcome to circle back if you want to, if you're afraid anything I'm going to discuss here is going to ruin your enjoyment of the show. Okay, so Jen finds herself in trouble with the law, and she struggles to pick up the pieces of her life in the aftermath. And so, as you may recall, at the end of episode 8, it ends with her staring into the camera. She's looking all shattered. She kind of very briefly went into like a savage She-Hulk moment, destroyed a bunch of property. You know, the DODC, or the Department of Damage Control, showed up very quickly. I will say in episode 9, first viewing, of course, I didn't see any reason why they were there automatically, unless, of course, Intelligentsia tipped them off and kind of knew they were going to trigger her and kind of knew that they would be there to apprehend her or any other superhero that got out of hand. So other than that, she was staring all shocked into the camera, and she was being painted by a bunch of lasers from the weapons from the Department of Damage Control. So of course, we are now into episode 9 to see what happened after that. We have the standard opening trailer. Again, I've said this before in my other reactions. First pinned comment down below, both live and on the replay, will be from my full She-Hulk playlist. I dropped a bunch of pre-edited videos before the season started. I've dropped some pre-edited videos along the way as the season played out. And then you have, including this one, all 9 of my live stream replay reactions to all of the episodes. And there's so much more for me to cover now that this season is over. Fingers crossed for season 2, because this was different. Okay, this was different. And there was even commentary as we got towards the end of this last episode in terms of why She-Hulk is different and why we should have different forms and formats of storytelling, that it all shouldn't just be the same pre-boiled down superhero formula for Marvel, or really for anyone else. Because let's face it all becomes very predictable and stale. Okay, so we do have the standard opening trailer. They didn't do anything weird with it, really, until you got to the last second of it. I thought it'd be green, or maybe they'd play it up like they kind of did with Werewolf by Night. So if you missed my live stream reaction first viewing to Werewolf by Night, that is also on my channel, and it's now in a playlist I've started for the Midnight Suns. I'm going to go back and do a lot of research and start packing more pre-edited videos over time about the various members of the Midnight Suns. Of course, I will concentrate initially on Werewolf by Night, no duh. And also Elsa Bloodstone. She needs to be getting a little bit more love on YouTube, so happy to do that. So, but at the very, very last seconds of the opening trailer, we did get something. We went into the retro version of kind of like a retelling of the retro kind of styled opener that they used to have for the Incredible Hulk TV series. So you have kind of like that 1970s music going on. The narrator kind of has that stilted kind of 1970s narration going on. And of course, instead of it being, Bruce Banner in there, let's say, you have Jennifer Walters in there. So if you saw any of the trailers leading up till now, occasionally they had like a quick little glimpse of her in like very 1970s getup, and her cousin was there, Bruce Banner, and he was also in 1970s getup. And she was like, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me if I were angry, calling back to the original classic TV show. They pay that off here. Okay. That wasn't just for trailers. It did show up in this episode as we go through like the retro kind of looking opening to this last episode, right? So I love how in the middle of this, we're like on a 1970s, 1980s looking computer, like the old looking huge computers. And she goes on to like because the screen is both mostly like green and white the way it used to look back in the day, when there was barely an internet that the general public used. It was just like scientists and super techie people. But she goes to like an intelligentsia looking website. They've got kind of like that kind of dot matrix X looking type on there. And Hulk King writes, She-Hulk is stupid. And under that, there's an enter reply field for those of us who are old enough to remember. So then she sits there and she types in, you're stupid. And this is while the whole retro opener is going, which is funny because they're still injecting a little bit of a comedic overlay over what would have otherwise been the more serious kind of like 1970s opener that the original TV show got. So they're reminding you that they're kind of trolling on that, and they're also reminding you, and this is the show that you still expected you would be seeing. And it ends with the name of the retro version of Jen's story, which is the Savage She-Hulk. So they're confirming that no matter how briefly it was towards the end of episode 8, she did go into Savage She-Hulk mode. She just pulled herself out of it. So after that elongated opener happens, the first scene is she wakes up. You have this feel like everything that we just saw from the 1970s retro stuff was kind of like a dream. So she wakes up on the floor of her own cell in the very same Supermax prison that she went to in episode 1. But in episode 1, she was the attorney on the outside of the cell, and she was going to visit Emil Blonsky, or the Abomination, and he was inside the cell, and she was defending the interests of him, of course, during his parole board hearing. But now she's the criminal, and she's behind the, energy force field kind of bars. And Mallory Book comes in along with Nikki and Pug. Jennifer asks if they've managed to get a hold of Bruce. She's been trying to get a hold of her cousin for how long? Since he went off on the SKAR spaceship, which we saw initially in episode 1. That was what caused the whole crash to begin with. But she doesn't know where he is really, and she can't get in touch with him. And she's been trying throughout the season. They've kind of seeded the field with the fact that they had a close relationship, and she keeps trying to get in contact with him and cannot. Pug says that they've left multiple messages, and he's funny because he's like, I managed to sound pretty calm considering I was calling the freaking Hulk himself. In that kind of like Pug way that he talks. Mallory redirects the conversation and says, look, you're behind bars. We need to get down to brass tacks. But Jennifer's thinking the brass tacks that Mallory's talking about is, let's go get intelligentsia, because she knows that, Mallory knows who intelligentsia is. They all do in that room. So Jennifer's all obsessed with prosecuting intelligentsia for what they did to her, which is not an inappropriate thing for her to want. But, given the current facts and circumstances, Mallory Book's like, hold on, forget them for now. We need to discuss your case. They baited you and you took the bait. So Jennifer gives her an answer that is fair. I think we would all say something to this effect if we were she. I was angry. And so, that's how anyone would respond in that situation. Besides them just having hacked her phone, which was upsetting, and calling her a fraud and being mean and saying that she didn't deserve her powers or anybody's attention or anything. If those things didn't set her off, the sex tape was very much likely going to do that, because they were slut shaming her. Okay. And her parents were there. I don't know if intelligentsia necessarily thought her parents were going to come to the award show, but if any of them understood anything about her behind the scenes, that for sure would have triggered her whether her parents were there or not. But it was just that extra that made her go savage. So she's like, anyone would respond like that, get mad, kind of lose it even briefly. And Mallory brings up a very accurate point. You're not just anyone, you're an out of control Hulk. That's what the witnesses on the scene saw. And this is a good moment of acting because you see the recognition dawn on Jennifer's face that this is exactly what she would say to her client. She would make the point that the witnesses at the scene saw what they saw. They're not inside her head. They may not have understood the whole chain of facts and circumstances that led her to take the action that she did, right? And you can see the understanding and then the acquiescence like register on Jen's face. So Tatiana Maslany did some really good acting all in that moment, because she realizes as both the person and the professional person, the person involved in the facts and circumstances and the lawyer, it's all coming together for her. And she's like, oh crap, she's right. So then Mallory says that there's a plea deal from the state. This is actually not unusual. Now, I've been an attorney since 1998. I'm admitted in New York and not California. I've really only done civil work, but I have friends that have worked on both sides of the courtroom when it comes to criminal work, which again, I do not do. So I've talked to a bunch of friends throughout the years. I understand that pretty much in any state, a first time offender will get offered a plea deal. Plea deals are not rare as it is, but this is like a total like knee jerk reaction. The state will be like, you've been very clean. You have a good background. We won't pursue any charges related to the incident, but you have to stipulate and agree to one or more things for us to release you on your own recognizance. And that's that. And you won't have any jail time and what have you. So Jennifer asks for the terms. And in the very next scene, we see what the terms are. She's in human form. She's got an inhibitor in her ankle, just like, her client, Emil Blonsky, has to live with now. And remember in a past episode, what was it? Episode 3, I believe, she did a fourth wall break towards the end of that particular episode. And she was talking about how an inhibitor might come in handy. But then, they left it alone, but it was an open loop, or what they call it in writing and screenwriting and such. She had a Chekhov's gun. She introduced a Chekhov's gun, which was an inhibitor for herself. You don't normally open a loop like that or introduce a plot device like that and not address it. It's okay that they waited until the finale to address it. Sometimes you address it in the same episode, sometimes you don't. It's not poor writing automatically that they didn't just wrap up every plot thread from episode to episode. Of course, they want to leave you on a cliffhanger sometimes, so you keep showing up for the next episode. In this case, the issue of the inhibitor with Jen didn't show up until now in episode 9. So she's got one on her, and apparently she's agreed to it, but of course she's not happy about it. But this comes into play later on as well. So her parents pick her up at the Supermax prison, and of course, more is true to form, is like, that's all right, sweetheart. People go to prison every day. And her mother's like, every day. Her mother's being supportive for a quick moment there, because this is a terrible moment. Nobody wants to go to prison. Jennifer just got to the point 2 episodes ago, where she finally made peace with the totality or the wholeness of Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk, and now She-Hulk's being taken away. And the next scene, she's at the office, she's packing up her stuff. She's lost her job. Of course she has. On 2 fronts. And as an attorney, I can tell you, without the superhero stuff, you get arrested for something, you have a criminal record, any firm's going to drop you, and you probably do get blacklisted. It's going to be very hard for you to get a job anywhere else as an attorney throughout the totality of that state. It's also possible, usually typical, that your license will be revoked. So she can't even practice anyway if that happens. So she's packing everything up. So that mug that was in episode 1 shows up again in episode 9, where it says, "See you later, litigator." Except now it's not just some cutesy, kitsy little attorney thing. And it shows how much she loves her life. She's kind of having to walk away from the practice of law. She's very clearly lost her job. But the second reason why she would have lost her job anyway is, let's say she didn't have a criminal thing, but she couldn't, for whatever the reason, maybe let's say she lost her powers, turn back into the She-Hulk. Her boss still probably would have dropped her because he said in the beginning when he hired her on, Holden Holloway, "I want you in She-Hulk form. I want you to be the face of the superhuman law division." Well, if she has to be a human for whatever the reason, she's no longer useful to that division that way. Now, maybe had she just permanently lost her powers and she's just an excellent attorney, nevertheless, he might have scooted her out of the superhuman law division and out of her own corner office, I'm very sure, to reposition her elsewhere on another team. That said, I've been practicing law since 1998. I was a paralegal for 6 years at one firm. Then I got my license to practice law and went off to a couple other firms through the years. And since 2015, I've been self-employed and I just do virtual work so I can be at home around my family. But that said, it's also not unusual that if you don't work out on one team, you may still be let go anyway. A lot of firms' corporate culture is, if you don't work well with this partner and or this team, even if it's not your fault, they're like, "Oh, our corporate culture doesn't support that." Usually what they'll do is they won't terminate you for cause. They will typically, this is what's done, they'll write a letter to the unemployment board saying, "We let this individual go. It wasn't for cause. We approve them getting unemployment for however long they qualify for and they need it." And you usually get a package and you're released. I don't know if that's what happened to Jen here. I'm going to guess no, and I'll tell you why in a second. So as she's packing, Nikki and Pug are helping her. But Nikki says to Jen, confirming for the viewing audience, that she's going to continue to work at GLK&H because they pay her nicely. You know, it would be a little bit much for her to just quit her job and go off with Jen, because in this case, Jen might not have a license anymore because of the criminal matter. And then she might kind of be blacklisted from working in any law office in any capacity, because that's how the corporate culture can go regardless. So it's ridiculous to ask Nikki not to have income, right? So she's going to continue to work at GLK&H, and this becomes important later, of course. And let's see. So Pug and Nikki help her take everything out of the office. They assure her they've still got her back, and they do. They do. And then we have a cutscene to a bunch of different news channels, like coverage of her, Walter's She-Hulk free. She-Hulk is now in quotes, which it really hadn't been before. But, now she's got the inhibitor on, so she's not going to be She-Hulk anymore. And she's stylized as an alleged superhero. See how that happened? She gets in trouble. They're not going to talk about her being a superhero anymore. Superheroes don't get arrested, right? Another channel's trending news story is the end of She-Hulk. And yet another station calls it Gala Gate, and they show her in her gala gown and stuff, her gala gown. And then a newscaster says a neighbor who wishes to remain anonymous said that they're uncomfortable knowing that an unstable She-Hulk lives just next door. And it's kind of sad because she's like never lost it before, and like suddenly everybody's all in hysteria. She's unstable. Oh no. And Jen's at home watching all of this. Imagine if that were you. Put yourself in her shoes, right? She knows that they triggered her on purpose. She knows that she's got this agency that's out to, ruin her. And now she's seeing the whole world react. She's lost her job. She's lost her income. She's lost access to a lot of things, possibly her license as well. So she goes out to the window and she sees that there's a whole bunch of newscasters there. Imagine that, like, too. Like, that's your life now. The news is like chasing after you, and it's not for a pleasant reason. So now we have a scene change. She's eating in her parents' house, and Morris, who's ever her ride or die, as her father says, just comic book accurate like that as well, I might add. Jen, if no one wants to hire you, you can always move back here with us. And her mother is like, oh, of course. But then she immediately goes into like wicked mom mode. But my gym stuff is in your room. And I work out every day at 7 a.m. So clearly she's not moving it out. And I think also there's like this subliminal message like, you can stay. We love you. We'll take care of you. But I'd prefer it if you didn't get too comfortable. It's for everyone's own good. Right. So then she goes, well, you should join me for workouts. We'll be workout buddies, which is what every adult in their 30s wants to do. Live at home with mom and dad and go work out with mom at 7 a.m. So then we have another scene change. Jen's walking through her apartment. It's empty. Clearly, to me, she's not getting unemployment. She didn't get a severance package, as I indicated earlier. So she's moved out. No one's going to hire her. She doesn't have any sense of income coming in anytime soon. So clearly, she can't afford to rent anything. Just one second. Apologies. And this is not sponsored by G Fuel, by the way. I have their shaker cup. So now we have another scene. She's walking from her car, right? I guess she left her apartment for the last time. And she's walking from her car to her parents' front door. Morris is there watering the lawn, and the press is there. So they start rushing towards her, and he sprays down the press so that they can't harass his daughter. And Morris says, I don't care if there is a drought. I've got water pressure for days. And then he shoots his hose off in such a way that he holds it like a gun that he's taken out of his holster. And he's like, boom, boom. And this kind of, to me, parallels with Morris, the father of Jennifer, in the comic books. He was a sheriff. He was in law enforcement. And even after he knew his daughter was a Hulk, he was still a good father to her. He was still protective of her. And he'd sometimes bring his gun to a scene to do whatever a human with a gun could do against superhuman people. But, I thought this was a good call back to the comic books. So then Jen moves back into her room. I love how on the reverse side of the door, there's a big poster from the original Legally Blonde movie, which every female lawyer just about before, during, or after law school will watch. It is so funny. And then also in her room, she has an Aaron Brockovich poster, another legal thriller where an everyday woman helps to, solve a big issue legally. That was a big class action civil lawsuit there, but still. It shows all sorts of influences, like touchstones that a lot of female lawyers, females who otherwise go into either law enforcement or civil practice, will watch. There's also a sun catcher with two owls on it. I don't know if that's just to support like the wise lawyer, legal wisdom and knowledge and stuff like that, or does it mean something more? Again, this is my first viewing. We do have a UCLA banner in the background. We know that she went to UCLA for college. That's where she graduated. There's also a poster for A Midsummer Night's Dream. I did do a video, again, live and on the replay. I'll have the full She-Hulk playlist there. And I talk about an Easter egg involving that poster because you saw it in one of the trailers. And I said it's the Easter egg that nobody's talking about. I'm going to do a revisit of that theory video. So but watch that first. It's centered on that poster before the series dropped, I should add. So let's see. Do I want to link to it right now? I probably should. If you have any questions live or on the replay, or there's any sort of Marvel-esque content that you want me to cover, that's fine. I have had people ask me to do Rings of Power, so I did 1 or 2 reactions to it. And I'm working on a very detailed Galadriel character study to show how the hero's 2 journeys. Joseph Campbell doesn't just talk about one hero's journey. There's not just one hero's journey, there's 2, the interior and the exterior one. So, I do think that that's going to be a very detailed video, and I'm going to kind of do a bit of a defense of Galadriel as a character, and why they're developing her the way she's doing it. So let me see if I can just grab that video first. I don't want to take up too much time with it. I have done quite a few videos on the channel already, so really, really quickly. I do have a couple of videos in the playlist that I've linked down below that talks about She-Hulk and Daredevil in the comics before the series dropped. Here we go. Here we go. Let me just very quickly get in here and grab this link. And I did not see the direction that they were taking her to. So this is the Easter egg no one is talking about. I'm kind of surprised, and I think I will still defend why I thought what I thought in that theory video, and I think I'll do a revisit of it if I can. The attorney stuff's been keeping me kind of busy, as you might imagine. So as she plops into the room, of course, there's Mom's workout gear in the foreground. Mom's clearly not moving it. Later, Nikki comes over to visit, and she's checking out Jen's huge conspiracy theory, like trifold board that she set up. She clearly has a ton of time on her hands because she can't get a job, right? So some of these things are Easter egg-esque that I'll have to go back to like research or unpack more. Again, this is my first viewing of this episode. I didn't get any advance release of it or anything like that. Lion Day 1, I'm not sure about that, so I have to look into it. But you can see from the trifold board, she's tracking all of the phone calls. She's traced them. She's trying to see if they're interwoven or linked. But this is a treasure trove of data on it. There's a form in the upper left-hand corner of that trifold board. There's some old 1970s looking type that's there. And it's talking about, so some of it's covered or obliterated, but you can see there's a reference to a blade. So I'm like, is that a blade Easter egg? We all know Mahershala Ali has been cast. We all know that the writer, I think director, was fired and that they're having rewrites of it, but they're still looking to film it in 2023, which is cool. We're given a social security number. I do have to look that up because they give the full social. So obviously this is for someone that is dead. I don't think they're putting out a live person social security number. They do give an address or part of an address. And they note that this individual has 10 independent children. And I'm like, is this Charles Xavier claiming like the X-Men as dependents? Like, I have to look into this. There's also a separate note that reads, by using fake identities, they are able to create an illusion of support for ideas. They are also able to challenge ideas on social media platforms by instantly countering arguments that appear to come from the grassroots end of a movement. Now, this note might just be, well, this note definitely has to do with in-show intelligentsia. They created this website, members are populating this website with content, and they're all jumping on to comment with one another live or possibly using bots or both, so that other people who visit this website who may not have created an account yet get the illusion that there's a ton of people drinking the Kool-Aid where there might just be a few. Does this happen in real life? Of course it does. So backing out from the show, this is a very wise wink and a nod to how a lot of people will, kind of create these like illusions that something has a ton of support when it doesn't, or that something has a ton of haters and it doesn't. Folks do want to rig the game, right? So also we have another notation on a separate part of the board that makes an argument that and again, some of this is obliterated, but not a lot of it. There's an argument that She-Hulk is a radical who likes playing the domination game, i.e., those who win at it, and then some of it's obliterated, who attract females through being a winner slash alpha. Those who, some of it's obliterated. There's a mention of vulture capitalism, which is why they keep pushing the idea of, and some of it's obliterated, and vulnerability as weakness. This could be just the show's commentary, not just what's going on with all the angry man babies, or the hateful man babies, as Mallory called them when we first discovered what intelligentsia was. You mean that site for hateful man babies? But there's notations that apparently Jen's made, that also the show is making a commentary of, those He-Man woman haters clubs out in real life, let alone the intelligentsia one. You know, they get involved in like mega capitalism, mega money. They put on a show and Peacock, in such a way that they're trying to project this sense of being a winner and being an alpha male. And of course, if you're going to follow that trope, then the notation on that board that says vulnerability is weakness makes a lot of sense. So she's also looked into the company, she tells Nikki. So now we're back away from the board. Again, there's so much on there. I love it. And she tells Nikki she's done as much investigation as she can from the outside looking in. Intelligentsia, is owned by several shell companies. They're all located outside the U.S. So she goes, how am I supposed to sue these guys if I don't know who they are? And then she points to a place on the board in that vicinity. There's like this symbol for chicken boy. I don't even know who that is. And there's a notation that says this type of warfare is ongoing and hard to detect. It is complicated to identify the source. This echoes what she just said to Nikki. Then some of it's obliterated. And it goes on to say, only as more often than not, then there's some more obliteration waged from several sources simultaneously. So that's the end of that note. I mean, clearly she's getting bombarded from all sides thanks to intelligentsia. And clearly the corporate family tree is complicated and it's difficult to parse out, because anything overseas can be difficult just because of international law and international database and record keeping laws. These companies can shroud and do whatever they like to a large degree. It's very hard, but the ever loyal Nikki makes a good point. Eventually, someone's going to slip up. And when they do, they'll be found. And then they can, in Nikki's words, we can destroy them by any and all means. And Jen keeps saying, no, I'm not out to like destroy them by any and all means. I just want to sue them for slander, libel, defamation of character, and then get them criminally charged for unauthorized access to a protected computer. So that means her phone. I mean, your phone is a device that's really a computer, right? So, and as long as she's got protections on it, she should be afforded a stronger prosecution, as opposed to, I went to an internet cafe and, I left my computer unprotected. That doesn't mean that somebody has the right to hack you. It's just harder to prosecute that sort of case and easier to defend against it. So she's talking about both criminal and civil, redress in court. Slander and libel, what's really the difference between the two of them? I should issue a separate disclaimer. This isn't legal advice. This is just legal issue spotting. Every state's penal code and or civil law is going to have its little nuances, but in general, painting with a broad brushstroke, slander is a spoken misstatement of spoken lies, if you will. The fastest way to describe this. And libel is in writing. So it's the same thing where you're disseminating or putting out falsehoods, but slander is spoken, Libel is in writing, and of course, electronically falls under the umbrella of having written or published a falsehood. Truth is an absolute defense against any claims of slander, libel, defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and or economic duress. So, and that goes all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So, again, truth is an absolute defense against any claims of slander, libel, defamation of character, intentional infliction of distress, and or economic duress. Jennifer cites to several causes of action. They're, strictly civil in nature. She's going to go after whomever intelligentsia really is on 3 grounds that I mentioned: civilly, and then criminally, I'm supposing under the California Penal Code, get them charged for unauthorized access to a protected computer. Any smart lawyer, even if they don't practice both types of law, when they're defending somebody, even if it's themselves, or they're prosecuting or representing the interests of a client, even if it's themselves, they're going to want to go after the full panoply or the full range of relief that they can get for that client. That's just, good customer service. What can I say? Really quick. Alrighty. So mom comes in like the classic nosy kind of pain in the butt mom. She's serving Nikki on a platter like it's the 1970s and people are entertaining folks in the parlors before they go play mahjong. She's got a tray and everything all set up, and it's like, what is this? And then after she puts the tray down, she picks up her device. She's at least current enough to have a device that can play videos, and she's merrily showing Nikki a goofy video that Jen and her friends made back in college, like years ago. And it's embarrassing, and Jen's really embarrassed and yells at her mother that they've got work to do, go away. And of course, then the mother is being all like catty back, going, well, when is this work going to be out of my living room? Right? Her daughter's life is in shambles. She's trying to find the perpetrator. And the mother's just like, get this out of my room. You're cluttering up my life and you're wearing out your welcome already. Thanks, mom. So Jennifer says, as soon as I can get justice, and I can't get that as long as you're hovering. But it's important what the mother shared with Nikki. So then, speaking of embarrassing videos, Nikki's like, uh-oh, and she shows her, of course, Dennis Bukowski has to show up by the end of the season again for one more round. And of course, he's being the typical perv. He's riding on the coattails of her being a news story again, this time not an attractive one. And he's making all these false claims that Jen dated him and that she was a psycho before the whole She-Hulk thing even became a thing. Oh my goodness. And in fact, he doesn't just say that they dated, like maybe they went out for coffee one time and he mistook it as a date. That might have been more innocent. No, the writers want to make it very clear he's a sleaze because he tells the interviewer, we dated for a significant amount of time. Oh my goodness. So anyway, Jennifer's had about enough at this point. After seeing that, she's got tears in her eyes. She retreats to her bedroom. Her mother's calling out, oh, I need you to help me move the big bookcase. Oh, wait, you can't do that anymore. So like needle, and Jennifer just collapses. So then she has a fourth wall break where she's like, I'll never be She-Hulk again. And I know that's what I wanted, but it doesn't feel right. This isn't even a reluctant superhero story because that's often a theme. And I said so from the first episode where people were like, well, why isn't she struggling with her powers? And how come she isn't having more of an internal struggle with it? And I said, that's not the flavor of ice cream that they are serving up to you. And because Bruce is her cousin and they have an interconnected family, they can get away with that with a straight face. This is a different type of story that they took you on, a different external character hero's journey and a different internal character's journey. So let's see. So she continues to say to the camera, this isn't even a reluctant superhero story. I'm just getting screwed over, like repeatedly. And then she asks us as the viewing audience, is that what you guys want? So Then you get the old-timey narrator's voice that came from the beginning of the episode, and Jennifer Walters is a woman at a new low. She has no more. And she's like, yo, wait, we're not doing a narrator. We're not that off the rails, which of course is funny because the whole fourth wall thing is always funny. And again, she predated Deadpool on this, so you go, girl. But it's also funny because it's a nod and a wink to the trope that if somebody's way off the rails and way broken down, the narrator's going to continue to carry the story because for however long that character can. Hey, Blaze Petty, what's going on? I love the show. I did too. I really did too. I'm glad that in phase 4, they introduced several characters that are going to be major characters going into phases 5 and 6 at the very least. And like I've said in previous videos, edited or not, we needed to have more of a deep dive investment in these characters so that when they're threatened or God help you killed off or whatever, we care more about them, right? Like we love Tony Stark and they killed him off, right? What did you like the best about the show, Blaze? I really want to know. I'm always loving what you guys like because different people see things different ways. So she kicks off the narrator and says, no, I'm not that broken down. And then she goes and texts her cousin for like the millionth time all throughout the season. Again, they've seeded the field with her trying to get in touch with her cousin. And I love how she assigned the name Smug Hulk to him because that was something that they referred to in episode 1. She called him Smug Hulk. And she texted him, hey, what are you up to? But then she fourth wall breaks and reconfirms he's still AWOL or absent without leave. And again, I don't think that she knows that he's off to SKAR, but that's where we knew he was because they showed you several episodes back. He was off to SKAR. And I found it jaw-dropping what they ended up doing. I was kind of hoping they were going to do what they did before the end of the season, and they did it. And then, I'll get there. So then she says to us, Emil would understand. So she's texting Emil Blonsky. And he really would. So that's a smart move. So she texts, is your offer to stay still good to stay a couple days? But true to form, you get the not delivered red message because again, he said multiple times to her, we don't really have good reception on my ranch. It kind of would run counter to what people need to do. They need to do the deep dive work on themselves. That's hard. You liked a lot about this show, huh, Blaze? I love the intelligentsia and meta stuff, and I love the comedy. I do too. It is definitely a different flavor of ice cream than other Disney Plus projects, let alone other Marvel movies that have been released. And I think that's important. Again, you serve up the same dish over and over again. People get tired. Variety is really good. Not everyone's going to love every dish. Not everyone's going to love them all equally, but I love how they experimented with the legal comedy, and I think they nailed a lot of stuff. As a lawyer, I've broken down the other 8 episodes up until now, and every single episode just about, they were smart to take a different area of the law, criminal or civil, and kind of do a quick treatment of it. And I think that with one exception, they really did a much better job than lay people would understand. So if you've missed any of my prior live streams / replays, you should go back and check them out. Kevin was so funny because that's such meta commentary too. And I do think that Kevin Feige narrated the Kevin bot. That was, oh my God. I was like, he did not. And the more Kevin spoke, I was like, oh no, that's him. That's him. And they're like auto-tuning his voice. That is so funny. So she says to the camera, well, he said come anytime, so this is a time. So she packs and she also reassures us, I'm not running from my problems. It's a mental health break. And that's kind of a good clarification because she really does want to speak to Emil. And when she sees Wrecker on the premises, she just keeps saying over and over again, I really want to talk to Emil. I don't want to talk to anybody else about this. And I was wondering if the writers were doing that because they didn't want her to disclose things to Wrecker. Maybe Wrecker is a deep fake and he's connected with the leader because don't forget, her story will tie into the whole leader, Captain America for New World Order. because they did reference about getting her blood. And even though they did something and threw it away, like there's still the whole point that that was such a thing. I think it's a nod and a wink to they did what they wanted to do, and the leader is definitely going to have even more blood from yet another Hulk to continue to do what he wants to do to establish his new world order. Blaze says people think the law stuff was bad, but I think it was fun, a la Legally Blonde. Yes, but no. So, like the comedy layer of it, absolutely yes. The layer underneath it, there was quite a bit of detail there that if you knew what you were looking for, you were like, they did do that right. They did handle that right. And the way the judges went down on certain things, I still think I would have agreed with how the different judges held things. Even when Judge Price denied her on an application that she made with the manufacturer's defect or products liability case, I also explained, and what was that, an episode back? I also explained why I would have done what she did, but then I immediately would have followed up with a different application and how procedurally that could have worked out in real life, superhero or no superhero. Because arguments will be made that client or client lists of customers, most of whom might be non-parties to the claim, they're entitled to their privacy. I gave y'all a pretty deep breakdown last reaction about how legit those concerns were, the judge's treatment of it, why the motion went the way it did, and what I would have done to have cured it. Because I've been a litigator since really 1998. So, but I agree with the whole Legally Blonde thing because they did tie in with that poster on the back of her door, Blaze. So totally legit. Blaze says, I think she should have done her due diligence with Leapfrog, but it was established that Holloway makes her do these high profile cases. That's true. It's also not unusual. A partner is going to assign you things, and occasionally you will have conflicts. There was a pre-edited video that I did about the conflict of interest issue that popped up with Jennifer, and how Holloway was not a dirtbag for telling her what he told her and expecting her to do what she needed to do there. And how it was handled was also very accurate, whether it's California law that you're looking at. Let me put the link to it here. Conflict of interest video. It is in the playlist that I linked both live and on the replay, but I'll put it here for the folks on the live. I really wish my comments would survive on the replay. I check the boxes, I do the things. I hope YouTube fixes that later on down the line. I'll try to remember to put the link so you could just jump right to it in the comment section down below. But it's hard. I often have to like jump straight to work after these things because I am still an attorney by day. All right, so here we go. So now we have a scene change. Nikki's there late at night. That's not unusual. Staff including paralegals, can often be at a law office at night. I'll watch it. Thank you, Blaze. I appreciate it. I think you'll enjoy it. Because it covers Emil Blonsky in episode 1, and it is also raised again when we get to Leapfrog and why that assignment could have legitimately worked, and what Holloway recommended that she do to try to avoid the whole morass. That was a fair thing to have him ask her to do as well. And I think the way it worked out probably is how it would have worked out in real life, usually. But anyway, so Nikki's working late, but then she jumps to the Intelligentsia website, and you see the video that the mother showed Nikki. And I'm like, when you first see that video, I'm like, her mother is part of Intelligentsia? But she must have somehow airdropped it to Nikki or what have you, because Nikki acknowledges, and you can see what she's doing on screen. She's under her fake account that she created a couple episodes back for Intelligentsia when she and Mallory Book were taking a look at it. And she says aloud, "Forgive me, Jen, for this transgression." So she uploaded the video that I suppose she got from her mother. And she's doing this because she's trying to gain the trust of whoever's running Intelligentsia. so that perhaps at some point they'll reveal themselves to her. Well, this is so goofy and embarrassing, and it's like, vintage stuff that not just anybody's going to have. So it's a pretty good risk that she takes, and it's a pretty good call that she makes, because Hulking sends her a direct message and reveals himself and says, "Epic find. There's a private event tonight. You should come. Deets below." So she writes, "Hell yeah, I'll be there," because she's trying to act all like bro-ish. And then the reply is, "See you at the event, bro." And that's when she realizes she's going to need Pug's help. She's going to need a beard, if you will, because she can't go walking in there. They don't want to see women. So then we have a scene change. It's nighttime. It's the time of the event. Jen shows up at Emil's property in the meantime, and Wrecker is there. He greets her. He gets her a guest room, and then you see her lying in bed, and she's reading another book by Emil Blonsky that's called Deep Haikus, which is funny because in episode 1, he's been sitting in jail writing haikus all day long. And he was writing haikus that he wanted to read to the parole board. Jen had a lot of good material. She's like, "We don't need to do that, please, no." So it's a nice callback to episode 1. And he's all in yoga pose in human form on the front cover. And she reads part of a haiku. "I will never be the same. If you say I am the monster, then what does that make you?" And I was like, not that I'm necessarily into haikus, not that there's anything wrong with them, but I'm like, that's kind of clever and revealing, because as she's gone on this internal and external journey, she's had to make peace with the monster inside of her. Again, this isn't the reluctant hero story, but she's like, making peace with the balance of it. And for anyone who's being critical of her, and that includes intelligentsia, if they're calling her a monster, then what does that make them, right? Hatred is a very expensive emotion, folks. So it's like a deep moment, and it connects, and then she throws the book away and says it sucks, which is funny. So now we have a scene change. Nikki's dropping Pug off the event. He does not. He is a very elevated personality. He doesn't want to do it. He tells her he doesn't. He's not that kind of guy. So Nikki's giving him advice, like, don't refer to women as females. Basically she's telling him to be a degrading troll, and she puts an earbud on him. And he's like, "No one's gonna, this isn't cool." And she's like, "You will not be the only person at that event with an earbud in." And I think this is a good meta commentary, because a lot of people are like walking around and they just can't seem to not be connected to a device. So she's kind of right. Go back 5 years, maybe he would have stood out like a sore thumb. So, of course, the reception sucks, and that is important for the writers to layer in there, because we're going to start panicking and going, "Oh my God, when is the call going to be dropped?" Or, "Oh my God, when is he going to misunderstand something?" It's raising the stakes, so it raises our pulse level. This is really good writing. And Nikki gets out of the car, and she's like, "Fine, I'll walk around. Maybe that'll improve the reception. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Could make things worse. Now we're even more nervous." And then someone might see her, and she's like all in hot pink and stuff. Clearly a girl. They're going to come and get her, right? So you're really worried at this point. So the writing's really good. Blaze says, "I really hoped that the retreat gang would come to her aid, but like that, they end up not being needed because of the fourth wall rewrite." And it fixed the need for major complexity because the men were just a bunch of trolls. Well, they definitely were anyway. And so I like, and we'll get there when she gets to Kevin the AI, I like how there's this big commentary within the show and then meta outside the show. Sometimes we just overcomplicate things, right? Too much seasoning can ruin a sauce, if we're going to keep going with the cooking metaphor from earlier, right? So, I like how it's like some things you could just leave them alone and you don't have to overblow them. It's dangerous enough. It's impactful enough. You don't have to take everything to and turn the dial to 11. Yep. Blaze agrees. Simple. Absolutely. Sometimes simple is best. I completely agree. So one of the bros that's there is like, "Why do we need She-Hulk? We already have a He-Hulk." And Lady Thor. And this is the thing. Raising the issue of Lady Thor is clever because of the conversation that's going on. But if you're a longtime comic book fan, I've been into comics since 1986 with the Uncanny X-Men. And then soon after that, because I really like Colossus, I went over to New Mutants as well because Sister Magic was there. Just a second. By the way, and if you're a regular subscriber, you know this from us discussing this on other lives. I am so doing a video, it'll be an edited video, that talks about how I hate that they did the New Mutants dirty. I know there was a lot of things going on at Fox and different directors and different pauses. They kept going back and because the actors were great, the casting was great. I think even some of the chemistry that they brought to the roles and or each other was great. If only they had a story that worked. Come on. I was like, these are the New Mutants, and they ruined it. But anyway, bringing up Lady Thor, if you're a longtime comic book fan, you know, male, female, however you identified, you would know they trashed Lady Thor when they brought her. And even though the story made sense, it was like, why do you have to make this a girl position? And even when they baked in the breast cancer story, it got kind of worse for a while. So the writers are really doing good callbacks and sometimes clapbacks at different things that were going on in the more traditional Marvel comic book saga before we really got into like MCU or the MCU being successful. I like the characters in Blaze. I do too. I really did. So, of course, Todd Phelps is there. I don't think anybody was shocked about that. He was so sleazy, you knew he wasn't just a sleaze. So he recognizes Pug from GLK&H. Remember, he normally worked with Mallory Book and was, because he's a tech bro guy, he's going to go to a big LA firm, whether it involved superheroes or not, or superhumans or not. He was one of the firm's best clients, right? So, you know, putting him there, Pug there, is important because it's like, oh, look at the nuances with the writing. Of course, he's going to recognize Pug. And then he says, Mother Pugger, as he points to Pug. And then you hear Nikki's voice through the earbud, and she's like, what? Oh, wait, that tracks, because Pug's like, Todd Phelps, you know? And she's like, oh, that tracks. It does for the viewer as well. But that's okay. There's like this brief moment of, oh no, the jig is up, but he's like, oh wow, you're one of us. I knew it. Come here, man. And he's hugging him. And then he points him and introduces him to the crowd. He's one of us. He rules and he's hot. Now, why did they put that in there? Because it's kind of like a meta commentary that a lot of she-man woman haters are actually latently gay. At least that's an allegation that's made. That's a theory that's posited. So, of course, him dropping that quick little, you know, and he's hot, because Pug's like, what? You know, like that wasn't a vibe I was going to normally catch. And I agree with Blaze. Todd is the worst. Now the billboard in the back says "Be Powerful." Remember when we were looking at the trifold conspiracy theory board? There was a discussion about how these sorts of perpetrators are alpha males. They want to project themselves as alpha males. They go into vulture capitalism. They're all about power and projecting power. So, of course, what's on the billboard is perfect. Be powerful. So then Todd says She-Hulk wouldn't even have her powers without the Hulk. So why do we have to act like she earned everything? Superpowers should go to the person best suited for the job. This sounds very leader-esque, but again, if you understand the comic book saga and you know what happened in the original Hulk movie with Ed Norton, who was a surprisingly good Banner, but I'm kind of glad we've gone in the direction that we've gone with that character since Mark Ruffalo does a bang-up job as Bruce Banner. But the leader was introduced there. This sounds like exactly the type of Kool-Aid that the leader would have everyone drinking. And I think it's going to factor in really well to Captain America New World Order. I wouldn't be surprised if you end up seeing Todd factor into that, the blood being given to the leader, because he was getting it from Bruce directly in the first movie. Which is why in episode 1, Bruce was, after he was done studying his cousin's blood, he destroyed all the samples and told her this can't get in the wrong hands, because he saw what happened with the leader the first go around. So that is exactly something that the leader would say. No one should have superhero powers unless they basically deserve them. And who makes those decisions? You got to ask yourself. You think that they deserve them? Too bad. So Pug asks Todd how he got involved in the group. It's a natural question for him to ask, and he knows that Nikki can hear through the earpiece so that she can get the information and synthesize it too. Everyone laughs. Obvi, Todd created intelligentsia. He's got the money to do it. He's got the power and the connections to do it. And he goes further and says, I'm the Hulk King. So just at that moment, of course, because they introduced the issue with the connectivity, the calls dropped. Pug is left on his own, of course. And Todd gets up on the stage and he says that they've proven intelligentsia has it. They're not all talk as an organization. It's not just a she-man woman haters club. They're all about action. They've taken action and they're just getting started. I think this is important again because there's a connection to a broader story that's going to be told across the expanse of phases 5 and 6. I believe Captain America New World Order is in phase 5. I don't have my chart in front of me. They are all talk, said Blaze. Well, until they screwed with her and they got her arrested and they're dismantling her life out from under her. Yeah, up until then, it was just a bunch of hateful man babies, right? Like Mallory said. So Pug sits down, everyone's cheering. Pug's like, oh gosh, you know. So now we have a scene change. We're at Emil's estate. Wrecker's in the kitchen making tea. Jennifer keeps asking him, where is Emil? And he's not really being clear about it. This is kind of really good story writing too, because you're like, Wrecker was a bad guy. He was hired by someone to take her blood. Is he just a plant? Like, is he legit? Is this about to go sideways between the two of them? Because he's really not giving her a trail of breadcrumbs to follow to Emil. Instead, he's going off about how Saracen, the vampire, remember him, got me into this poor tea, but you have to watch it when you make it because it involves chicken blood. Of course, it involves blood. It's a vampire that taught him about that. So that's kind of funny, but still, you're too nervous to really laugh too hard at this point. If you're invested. So Jennifer says, I don't think anyone can understand what I'm going through right now. So I don't want to have tea with you right now. But Emil can understand because he's literally gone through the exact same thing that I'm going through. Wrecker's still trying to get Jen to open up to him. And you're like, why? Is he pumping her for information? Oh my gosh. But Jen's like, look, I'd really rather talk to Emil directly about things. So she specifically repeats, do you know where Emil is? So she finally gets the answer. They're down at the lodge. There's some private event down there. She leaves and he's drinking the tea going, kind of getting used to that chicken blood. Now we're at the intelligentsia event. Todd is bragging that the guest speaker cost a ton, so you better cheer. This is kind of like the Wakanda spear. I spent $1 million on it. Like he's so into himself, the money, the power, and the clout that it gets him. Then he goes, give it up for the Abomination. And that's where everything connects. It's the same event that we're dealing with. The one that Emil is at, the one that intelligentsia is at. If you didn't kind of figure it out in the seconds leading up to it, it's still jarring because you're like, oh my God, everything just cross-hatched together that quickly. That's really good writing. They pulled everything together. They cinched it all in. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't connect the dots until the last second. So it was very well played. So now when you see more of the intelligentsia event, that's where you start to see all the posters where they were a couple of episodes back. They're shooting things at different angles now, and you're like, oh my gosh, and Emil comes in as the Abomination in that white t-shirt that you've seen in the trailers. So you're like, oh my gosh. And you're like, is he a bad guy after all? And I kind of was very torn because I was like, man, I really liked him as a recovering villain. And I really liked him as, listen, at worst from now on, he's an anti-hero. I really liked him for that role. And he brought tears to my eyes when he said to her at the end of episode 7, when he was like, Jen, just remember, anybody who hurt you, it's a lesson. It's a lesson, right? Like, try to find the gift in the garbage of it. They're there to teach you a lesson so that you can grow. So I was like, man, if they ruin him, it'll upset me, but it's good writing and I could see it being a twist. That wasn't the twist. Because I'm like, no wonder. Here's what I'm thinking. When she was there in episode 7, and she was in that circle, and he and everybody else egged her to delete Josh's information, Josh was the plant. Josh was the one that cloned her phone. Josh was the one that shot the sex tape and I guess got her blood, right? While she was deep sleeping. So I'm like, this is so perfect. Oh my God, that's where they took this, right? And Jen walks into the cabin. Abomination comes out. The address he gives the audience is neutral enough that I'm like, does he understand what's going on here? Because some speakers they just get paid, they show up, they do their ditty, they leave, right? Blaze, you nailed it. I love that Emil had no clue. No, because the opener that he gave was, Todd told me that you are not satisfied with your place in the world. Do not ask for permission. Well, as a speaker, you could be saying that in front of any audience, right? Out of the 6 human needs, there's significance. And so people want to feel significant and they want growth. That's another one of the 6 human needs, right? So, he's starting to tap on all the things that, whether you're a life coach or a business coach or whatever, these things are really relevant. You want to tap on 1 to all 6 of the human needs. So he's saying, do not ask for permission. And they're all intoning it back to him. And Jen walks in as they're chanting. And then he says to them, be powerful. Well, anybody wants to feel powerful in their own life and in their own right. So again, he may have no clue what he's whipping them up into. And Jen walks in as they all say, be powerful. Of course they want to be powerful. They are alpha males who are, she-man woman haters who also hate female superheroes, right? It's not just She-Hulk. They're throwing in Lady Thor and other folks that are female that they feel don't deserve their powers and or don't deserve the spotlight. So this is where Jen makes eye contact with Emil, and she's overwhelmed. Like, what? And we're overwhelmed. There's like smoke coming out of my ears. But where that Emil had no clue, like Blaze said, he immediately goes down into human form because he's non-threatening. And now she's human level, he's human level. It all up in an instant. I'm like, he has no idea what's going on. He was just paid to speak. And Jen's like, then she sees Todd and she's like, Todd, what are you doing here? Actually, I don't even care. And then she focuses on Emil. You're transforming into the Abomination? Like, you told me you weren't doing this. And he says, I don't transform, but for speaking engagements. Nothing bad. Strictly for profit. So now we've learned in 60 seconds between what he does and what he says, he's not a bad guy. And he's not there to threaten her. But she's still stuck on that because she doesn't see the big picture that this is intelligentsia yet. So she's like, I vouched for you. And he's like, Jenna, I'm sorry you're upset, like all very sweetly. And then Nikki breaks in and she's like, what are you doing here to Jen? And Jen's like, oh, what are you doing here? And then Pug runs up and he's like, we all need to get out of here. And then he says to Jen, so that she can quickly connect the dots, these guys are intelligentsia. Todd created the site. He's the whole king. And Todd's like, remember your attractive date, Josh? You think the sex tape was the worst part? I got him to seduce you and steal your blood. So this is part of the overall fact pattern. Regardless of what they do next, all the work that the writers did, all the different scenes in the episodes leading up to now, it's confirmed. Because I have to say, an episode or 2 ago, I wasn't clear on whether or not they got the blood. So Todd narrating this to the audience is to confirm, oh no, they do have her blood. So nobody has to charge her to get the blood. That's not what's going to happen in this episode. They've already gotten it. And Todd says, my team has also synthesized your blood so it could safely give me all the powers that you never should have been given in the first place. And then he goes, I didn't get handed superpowers. I had to earn them. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many different origin stories, dude. Relax. And Jen does a fourth wall break and says, that's not gonna work, right? Like, we're not actually doing this. Because it can also be a trope, right? How many different stories have you seen inside or outside the MCU where, the bad guy wants the powers that the other person had all along? And it could be a jealousy thing. It could be like, those should have come to me, but by a twist of fate, you got it. Like, this is a common storytelling trope. It's not even just like a superhero story trope or a comic book trope. He starts transforming. It's all ugly. It's all weird. And Jen does a fourth wall break and says, this can't possibly be where this season's going. Then you see Titania coming in, breaking through the wall, and she's all, hi, losers. And at this point, I kind of like Titania. I explained a couple reactions back. The expressions on the women's faces, the things that they say to one another, the fact that Titania doesn't want to beat her up as a human, she wants to fight equals. It's like she's better than just a sleazy supervillain. And they're kind of like, all right, this is our dynamic. Like, it's kind of cool. So when she came breaking through the wall, I kind of liked seeing her there. But then this kind of is like, well, how did she know to be there? Wait a second. And so Jen does a fourth wall break to confirm to us, okay, Titania too. And then Todd starts to charge. The Abomination swoops in to save her. And I'm like, yay! Like, I'm cheering it on. He's like, Jen, watch out. And he's all protecting her. And the Abomination is like fending men off because Todd and his men want to attack her. It is a cluster, Blaze. That's a great succinct way of putting it, because to add to the cluster, the Hulk comes through the ceiling and we're like, he's back and he knew to come here. So now this is just stretching credibility a little bit too far. And then he and the Abomination are fighting, but the Abomination's like, it's not what you think, So Jen does a fourth wall break, and she's asking the questions that by now you're probably asking yourself. What is even happening here? This is a mess. None of this storyline makes sense. She's like, is this working for you? And then suddenly, like, I love how they did this. Suddenly we're on the main screen for Marvel, on the Disney Plus channel. And I'm like, I'm picking up the remote. I'm like, what did I do? Did I accidentally tap the remote? I'm like, But then Jen pops out of one of the panels and says, hey, what do you think you're doing? This is not going to stop me. I'm just going to break this inhibitor really quick. She actually does that off camera, and you hear it breaking, and then she pops through one of the panels. Now stop. If you've ever read She-Hulk, and she is one of my most favorite characters in the MCU. I started liking Colossus, but like once I knew there was a She-Hulk, I'm like, I'm a lawyer and I'm a female lawyer. I love this. So I had to get the limited edition She-Hulk thing, where she's just basically in lawyer mode and not her comic book accurate costume. That one's cool too. But this one means a lot to me because of what I do for a living. So what I loved about the comic books, sure, she did fourth wall breaks, and that's one thing. But like when she broke stuff, sometimes she completely broke stuff. She'd run through different panels and scenes that she didn't belong. She'd like rip through things that looked like ads to scold the writers. So now, she's scolding Marvel going, what the heck is this? So then she kicks her way into another, she's in her comic book accurate costume at this point. She kicks her way into another panel, and it's the set where filming's going. And then she's walking through the lot. And then she goes into the office for the She-Hulk show. And she's literally in the writer's room scolding them in the show, just like she would have done at times in the comics. So I love it. And I love that there's a poster in the background that says, it's got a picture of the Hulk hulking out. And it says smash and shred sensitive documents, which is what any like big company would want you to do. Sensitive documents, no less. And what could those be, right? It is great, Blaze. That's the best. She pulled a Deadpool too, and credits that. I know. I know, I love it. I can't wait for her and Deadpool to share a screen together. My head's gonna explode. So she's scolding the writers. And she's like, the bad guy steals my blood to get superpowers? Where did you get that from? Like every other story out there? Yeah. One writer says, well, there are certain things that are supposed to happen in every superhero story. And she pounds the table. She's like, why don't we just do things our own way? Right. So it's important to see this from a meta sense, but it's important also because they knew they were going, the writers, all right, let's pull all the way back. The writers of the show, not the actors portraying the writers in the room, they knew that they were going to serve up a different flavor of ice cream. And it's not so much that it's a comedy, it's not so much that it's a legal comedy. It's not going to be doing all the exact tropish stuff, or at least it wasn't meant to, that a lot of superhero fans, be they male or not, however they identify, are expecting. And she's asking a very poignant question. Why do we have to follow the same formula all the time? Every movie, every show. Why? So Blaze says the writers were pretty genius. Yes! Yes, because it's cool. Yes, because it follows the comic book saga, the classic comic book saga. And yes, for all the people who get it, they're like, I love the classic stuff and I enjoy it for what it is on the big screen or to the extent that it's on Disney Plus. But you know what? I don't want to eat the same dish all the time and I don't want to see the same plot all the time. I don't. Now, Rob from Comics Explained, who I love, 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 and I'm sure anybody watching this live or on the replay, they know who he is. I've been a fan of his for a long time. No, I mean, really, he actually did a video. I can't remember the title. Oh my goodness. But it wasn't that long ago to this being shot live, where he makes the point that, you know what, he's not upset that the MCU isn't completely following whatever the original comic book story was. Because he says, I love to the extent that they do it, to the extent that they remain loyal to the characters. I love it because that is familiar and I love seeing it. But I don't want to know everything that's going to happen, the exact way that it's going to happen, because a little something's going to be missing for me as a viewer. And so they know they're going to have a lot of outsiders to the comic book scene and a lot of insiders. By kind of tweaking things, they're able to service both and keep the storytelling fresh. But if you're mad, mad, mad because you want them to follow that same recipe all the time and serve up that same dish all the time, you're not going to be pleased with things like Miss Marvel or She-Hulk or anything else that they served up on Disney Plus. For anybody who's complaining about Phase 4, Rob said it too. Relax. And in fact, to the extent that there's a lot of table setting, it's because you want these characters when they're being threatened later to mean something to you. I said that too earlier. But Rob also said, relax, because phases 5 and 6 are going to be super dark. Because if you thought Thanos was bad, I'm just going to tell you, Kang, there will be blood all over the place. And he's not doing anything with a bigger picture of trying to help the universe. Or there's like a greater, there's a method to my madness. Nope. Nope. There will be blood and there's going to be deaths on Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. There's going to be deaths. More than one important character, meaningful character has to die. And there was some connection to it in the Marvel comic book saga of it. And it has to happen because right off the jump, when we get Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, they're saying that kicks off. No, they're saying that the holiday special for Guardians of the Galaxy kicks off Phase 5. I don't know why. Obviously, they're going to set something up in there, but I would have thought Quantumania was a good kickoff for 5. But obviously, I don't know everything Marvel knows. Or Kevin knows, because we're going to get to Kevin in a minute. So she says, why don't we do things our own way? Why does everything have to be so stilted? Yeah, Kang scares me, says Blaze. Oh, yeah. They have to after Thanos and everything that did happen there, and there were some very brutal things that happened there, how do you up the ante? You up it with Kang. And I know they have like a 5-year plan to get all the stories with Kang, but where you go after that, ooh, I don't know, because Kang is super brutal. There's no way. I apologize. So another writer says that's a story that Kevin wants. Now, we're presuming Kevin is Kevin Feige, right? So She-Hulk says, okay, then I want to talk to Kevin. And everyone laughs because it's so ridiculous. Like going off to see the Wizard of Oz. Nobody sees the wizard, not know how, right? So then you get the different responses. Nobody talks to Kevin. His time is invaluable. I'd murder you if you tried to get to him. Like all this slavish devotion to the Wizard of Oz. I mean, Kevin, who you presume is Kevin Feige, right? So then we get a fourth wall break from She-Hulk, and she's like, okay, this is very creepy. Oh, wait, no. She talks to them and says, okay, this is very creepy how you talk about him. It's not healthy. I'm going to go talk to Kevin now. And there's two ways to look at this now. Number one, the amount of slavish devotion that everybody pays to Kevin Feige, both inside the company and out of it, it's funny. It's totally funny. He deserves a lot of credit and success, and he has been on the scene way longer than a lot of people think, predating even Iron Man. So I'm going to tell you, I believe he did a lot of work on shows that have come to Disney Plus that was on Netflix and elsewhere as well. So he's had his hand in things for very, very many years. So it's also funny how she indicates that it's creepy, all this slavish devotion, and Kevin makes all the decisions. From the outside looking in, there's a lot of critics that are like, oh, Kevin Feige is a diva and he's all these things. So she goes off to deal with Kevin. I'm thinking for sure we're going to have Kevin Feige do a direct cameo. Was I wrong? Well, kinda. So she goes into the Marvel Studios office. They make her sign this non-disclosure agreement that goes on and on forever. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, I've seen plenty of NDAs in my day. They do go on and on forever. That NDA was hilariously long. Yeah, they're making a point, but what truth is stranger than fiction, and comedy is only funny when there's the kernels of truth in it, right? Usually, right? So as a lawyer, I laugh my face off. And then they go and they tap the receptionist taps the security button anyway, and she asks the question that of course we would ask. Why would you make me sign this thing if you were going to do that? And he's like, well, everyone has to sign the NDA, which is a big thing at Marvel or any other multi-million or multi-billion dollar company, right? You've got money, you've got power, you've got a lot of intellectual property, a lot of, secrets, trade secret-esque stuff. No one's going to go in to see anybody, whether it's Kevin Feige or not, without signing an NDA. Okay, just no. The hallway fight was great, like Blaze says. I love how she picks up one of the guards and knows to use them to get in because it's a retinal scan to see Kevin Feige. And I'm still totally expecting the human form of Kevin Feige when she goes into the office. And this huge machine drops down and it's Kevin, which I thought was so hysterical. And Kevin breaks down the acronym. Now it's Kevin Feige's voice and they auto-tuned it. So Kevin does have, she's kind of seeing Kevin, but kind of not. And Kevin breaks down what the acronym is. Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnected Nexus. And then Kevin, the AI goes, were you expecting a man? Yes, of course she was. We all were. She says, yeah, why would I expect a giant AI brain and not a man? Wait, so you're the one making all the decisions here? So, so this is meta on top of meta on top of meta. Because Kevin Feige's there, but he's not. She's off to see the wizard. Nobody gets to see the wizard. She finally gets in to see the wizard. It's definitely not what she thought. But to top it off, algorithms do make a lot of decisions for a lot of multi-million and multi-billion dollar companies today. I'm a content marketing coach. So on the Stacey Storino channel, I'll type it out here, STACEYSTORINO. I've got like 1,600 plus subs there. There I teach conversion-based content marketing. And it's kind of like a yin yang nowadays. You kind of can't take the machine completely out of the equation. You have to do the work for the humans because those are the people you're going to serve, but you do have to be careful about how you optimize your content so that the algorithms know how to sort and serve out your stuff, not just for search, but for suggested. And that's something else that goes on, not just on YouTube, but really any social media platform out there nowadays. So I kind of like the meta commentary that no major decisions are made without at least consulting an algorithm, because whether you like it or not, that is part of the landscape nowadays. Whether you're a solo practitioner, whether you are an entrepreneur with a small business, or whether you are corporate America. So then it says to her, it'll answer her questions, but first she has to transform back into a human. And she's like, why? And it goes, you are very expensive, which is completely true. Everything that they have to do, whether you liked the CGI or not, that's expensive. It's time consuming. There's only how many companies out there on the planet that do it. They're all exhausted. That's a whole nother news story that you can go look up on the internet. But the longer she's She-Hulk, the more expensive everything gets. So if you've been watching The Rings of Power and you're like, I don't understand it, $60 million an episode, the CGI that they have to do just to make the elf heirs look real, oh my God. Blaze says, I think the CG was photorealistic. I think so too, to be honest with you. But and to be true also, and Rob from Comics Explained has said this more than once before. Like even when Endgame got released, if you saw the movie when it first released, and then you went back a week or two later and saw it again, the end fight scene, there was more definition and stuff. They are polishing stuff up and out long after they've released stuff. Like when Loki season 1 went out there, they not only added an extra quick scene in episode 1, they tweaked certain scenes for that cabin scene at the end. There were certain things that they tweaked, they polished, and they changed slightly as well, while keeping that same scene otherwise. And the show had been out for how long? So if you go back and you rewatch these things, especially if you're somebody like me, where I'm looking for Easter eggs, I'm looking for the big patterns, it's kind of hard to miss. Oh, wait, they changed that. Oh, wait, the definition is sharper. So they're going to probably continue to polish up She-Hulk a little more. But when they put out the first trailers, people who were dogpiling on that because of the whole Uncanny Valley thing, they were being kind of unfair, or they don't understand how this industry works. So I did a video that kind of briefly talked about that as well. It was called Why She-Hulk is Better Than You Think. I think that's in there. It's in the playlist that I had. I also discussed why the She-Hulk series is a bit more of an upgrade than you think it might be. So Jen shrinks down to human form. She's going to. And I love how Kevin puts in this extra industry piece of data if you didn't know. He's like, or it's like, wait until the camera is off of you. The visual effects team has moved on to another project. So she does it when the camera's off, so nobody has to deal with the shifting either. So it's not just the CG stuff. It's also visual effects other than that, which you wouldn't necessarily know unless you understood the industry. So once the camera goes back to where she's in human form, and then Kevin says, yes, I make the decisions. I possess the most advanced entertainment algorithm in the world, and it produces near perfect product. Well, you now come to think of it, of course, Marvel would have, the best algorithms possible out there. Any company that's on or at or near the cutting edge or bleeding edge knows to invest in this sort of stuff. Microsoft has like such great algorithms that they possess to help ads perform the best. It's amazing. But I don't want to bog this down. But I love how meta they get and how applicable all the layers are. So, but Jennifer doesn't care. She's like, Kevin, I'm not happy with what's happening with my story. And here's another meta thing. You do not get to choose. The characters don't get to choose. The actors and actresses don't get to choose. They don't. This is a show. This is a script. Go do it. Or is that true? Because Mahershala Ali freaked about the script that they wanted him to do as Blade. And he's like, I'm not doing it. And they fired the writer-director. So yes and no. But for the most part, painting with a broad brushstroke, you're just a talent. You don't call the shots. And Kevin's telling her that now because she's like, why not? It's my show. And Kevin's like, incorrect. It is Kevin's show, which is also meta because some folks say that when you're dealing strictly with Marvel Studios and the movies, Kevin's involved in all the products, but like for Disney Plus stuff, he's involved, but he's not as hyper involved as he is with the movies. Believable, understandable. But it's Kevin's show. There's a lot of industry reports that make it like Kevin is a diva and, he's the hand that rocks cradle. He's the hand that rules the world. So this is like an in-joke and a laugh at all of that, whether it's true or not. It's a wink and a nod to all of that. So Jen goes, all right, well, listen, creative ownership. Can we at least agree that this is a legal comedy? And she's doing a lawyer thing because when you have a very difficult client who's all the way out there or a witness that you are examining or cross-examining and they're all the way out there and you're like, oh, this is a mess. This will not do. You start laying down breadcrumbs for them to follow to rein them back in as a witness. And then you build a bridge that they end up coming across with your questioning and their answers so that eventually you will be able to gain ground on that witness. So she asks a question where you're like, why is she asking this? It's episode 9. I think we figured out that it's a legal comedy. But she's doing it for a reason because she's trying to rein the AI in to get it to ultimately agree with her. This is really good negotiating as a lawyer. It's a good negotiating tactic, even if you're not a lawyer. So she starts to build the bridge. She goes, can we at least agree that it is a legal comedy? The AI says, if that's what you prefer to call it. She goes, well, then I would like to give my closing argument. And so the machine's all, oh, ha, ha. I see what you did there. You may proceed. All flat, but. So she's like, okay, I kind of started to rein him in. We don't have a ton of time in the episode, but this is what an attorney would do. So she starts with a closing statement, and the attitude that she puts on reflects that. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is known for its big spectacles, but it's often said that the Marvel movies all end the same way, which largely they do, folks. And then all of a sudden, you get Kevin saying, wait, who's saying that? And she goes, perhaps this is a result of following the unwritten rule that you have to throw a plot and have all this flash and this whole blood thing that seems so super suspiciously like the super soldier the super soldier serum at the audience at the climax. I propose that we don't need to do that. It distracts from the story, which is where my life fell apart as a character. When I was learning to be both Jennifer and She-Hulk. Those are my personal stakes, Kevin. And so what's being said there is there's enough momentum for that character where you could have a physical struggle scene, but you do not need to blow it all up. Like Blaze said earlier, you don't need to like go that extreme, right? It just became, in a sense, too shrill and too complicated. Simple, as Blaze said, is better, and I agree. So her stakes were kind of enough as the character. So all of a sudden you hear that Kevin is processing the new data. What is the end game you propose? So it's crossing the bridge. She's doing it. In real life, you'd be asking a bunch more breadcrumb questions to get them there, but that's okay. We don't have a lot of time. So she says, well, can we not do the thing where Todd gets the Hulk powers? The powers aren't the villain. He is. And that's really important because it's true. You could have a knife, a kitchen knife that you cut up your dinner with. You can also take that kitchen knife as a weapon of opportunity and go kill someone with it. The knife isn't the bad guy. It's the person wielding the knife that could either just be innocuously eating their dinner or suddenly a murderer. The powers aren't the villain. The method isn't the villain. The person using them or abusing them is or are. So Kevin's like, okay, point well made, erases the blood plot. She goes, and Bruce swooping down from literal outer space to save the day? Too much. And then I love how Kevin starts to really tap on that raw nerve that we have as an audience. This is the finale of this season, possibly this show, if they don't bring it back for a second season. And so we're all like, but wait. We wanted to see Bruce Banner. We wanted to see the Hulk return from SKAR. We want to know what happened out there. There's all these theories that we have as the individual viewers and or the Marvel theorists that we follow, like Rob from Comics Explained, if you're me, want to know, is there any payoff? Was anyone right? We're curious. It's an open loop, and viewers hate open loops. They want them closed. So the AI is us, a stand-in for us, saying, but Bruce is supposed to explain what he was doing, and she cuts him off and goes, no, we don't need any of that. But we owe it to introduce, and we're all like, ooh, is it SKAR? Who is it? And she's like, no, save it for the movie. And I'm like, oh my God, there's been so much theory that at some point, probably phase 6, there will be a World War Hulk sort of thing, right? And that SKAR will factor into that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's referencing the movie. Kevin isn't correcting her and saying, oh no, there won't be a movie. So as the audience, you're like, ooh, so it's exciting. So then Kevin's like, okay, recalculating, and Abomination. So Jen says, after all of that, with Emil's journey along with her, I just want him to hold himself accountable. And so Kevin's like, okay. And then Jen's like, enough of this stuff at nighttime. Let's have the big climax during the daytime. And Kevin's like, are we done here? Like, enough, you diva. And she goes, ooh, I would not mind seeing Daredevil again, which is exciting as an audience member because you're like, was that just a hookup? Because She-Hulk in the comics and clearly in the Disney Plus series is, hooking up here and there, friends with benefits, dating and mating. It's what not just millennials who are single will do. It's people in any age and any era would do. But, she's being very much a strong female and doing it and not necessarily trying to get married with everybody. The fact that she said she wouldn't mind seeing Daredevil again to Kevin, it's like, ooh, she's sweet on him. This wasn't just a hookup and see you later. And when you come back to California from New York, give me a call. It's like, no, I want to see him now. So then I love how Kevin says, and it's kind of a play on words, historically, we've been blind in that department. So she plops down on the floor, making herself comfortable. And Kevin's like, oh, wait, you're sitting? And she's like, and what's all this with the daddy issues? We got Tony Stark daddy issues, Thor daddy issues, Loki, same daddy, same issues. And, Kevin's like, oh boy, but it's not untrue. Star-Lord, she goes on, 2 daddies, 2 issues. That's another common storytelling trope in comics or outside of them. And Kevin's like, please stop. And she's like, ooh. And she winks at us and gives us a thumbs up and says, when are we getting the X-Men? Which was gold because everybody's like, please bring mutants. Please, please, please. We've had a bunch of Easter eggs along the way. Please, please, please. Deadpool, Wolverine, a ton for Iron Man. I mean, come on. And we also know what's been announced. So it's like, when are we getting them? So she's a stand-in for the audience as well. So Kevin goes, I cannot tell you that. Oh, we're let down as a viewer, right? So she goes, back to She-Hulk, I do have some thoughts about the direction of season 2. So if you enjoyed this season, you're like, yay, there should be a season 2. There's already conversations while this is being shot live around the internet and in interviews of the directors and stuff. Do you think there will be a season 2? And there's an openness to that. So Kevin suddenly goes, you will not be able to access the K.E.V.I.N again. That error on our platform has been fixed. And she's like, that's it, we're done, And it's like, that's it. You obliterated the ending. And she's like, well, yeah, that's what Hulks do. We smash things. He, her cousin, smashes buildings. I smash fourth walls and endings. And also Matt Murdock. And I'm like, oh my God, she's way sweet on him. That's really fun. So now she gets back to the show and she says, see you on the big screen. Oh, no. Kevin says, okay, now get back to the show. See you on the big screen. And it's kind of like a little bit of an Avengers swell to the music. And she's like, really? And it's like, no. Oh, whatever, Kevin. Believe me, she's on the Avengers. She's going to be on the new team of Avengers that gets assembled. So don't worry about it. So then she's like, should I transform back? What's the most budget-friendly way to do this? And we have a scene change. And it's funny because, okay, the story is moving forward, but having a scene change is also the most inexpensive way to handle her transformation. That is the most budget-friendly way to do things. So it's daylight, there's cop cars coming, Todd's being taken away or whatever. Titania shows up and she's shooting everything for content, of course, because it's totally a Titania thing to do. And she's like, oh my God, guys, OMG, we're about to witness a murder. And I'm laughing. Even Todd is like, oh no, because he thinks she's gonna physically smash him. So he's like, just do it. And she transforms to Jennifer Walters and says, I'll see you in court, babe, which is a callback to when he was calling her babe at the restaurant. Then all of a sudden, Daredevil drops down from the sky, from out of nowhere, because that's what she asked Kevin for. And he's like, Jen, I'm here to help. And she smiles and she's like, hey. Hey, Devil, you missed it. Ooh, I'm sorry. And he's like, everything? Oh, man. And she was like, it was great, though. And I'm happy to see you. And he's like, oh, I'm happy to see you, too. And Pug's like, did they hook up? And Nikki's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, I can't believe they're going to continue to play this. I wonder how far they're going to take it. And then Jen's like, just 1 second to Daredevil. And he's like, sure. And while she's walking off to handle something, Titania, of course, is like, hi, Daredevil, like, yoo-hoo, big boy. And Emil is with the DODC. He's about to sign some documentation. He's turning himself in of his own recognizance. And of course, they want documentation to process him and also to show that he willingly is turning himself in, which is what Jen asked Kevin for. Have him take accountability for the fact that he did lie to her. He lied to his parole officer. Sure, he's not changing into the Abomination for bad reasons, but for profit isn't good enough. You didn't say that you were just going to wear your inhibitor, but to make money. He's writing books. He's doing stuff in human form. He didn't have to go into the Abomination form to make a living. So Jen goes up to him and says, as your legal counsel, if you're about to sign this, that's fine, but you go back to prison for 10 years for violating your parole. And he goes, yeah, I have to pay the price for my actions, And she's like, well, maybe you can write some haikus about it. Because again, going back to episode 1, that's what he was doing as part of, the way to pass the time. So we have the scene change and they're with the family. They're outside having a picnic. And there's Matt Murdock, he's not in Daredevil form. He's in Matt Murdock form. And we learn a little bit during this exchange where I'm like, this is going to be a continuing thing. I did not see that coming, but it's kind of cool because I wonder how they're going to bake her in, even if it's just little sprinkles of her in Daredevil Born Again once that comes out. So, the parents are having a conversation with him like you would normally see parents do with a new boyfriend. And they do let let slip during this set of exchanges, he's been there for a week. So it's not like they knocked boots again and then he was on the next flight back out to New York. He's been there for a whole week with Jen. So this to me is like, wow, they might try a long distance relationship. The Fast and Furious ending was so cool. I loved that. I did. So Morris is like, you have your own practice. Yeah, and Hell's Kitchen says Daredevil. And so the mother is like being snotty to, I guess, her sister. You hear that, Rebecca? He has his own practice. And of course, it's mom's being very competitive, right? So Rebecca's like, Hell's Kitchen doesn't sound very nice. Like, it's a very nice area. So she's flicking. It's not so much at Matt, it's at her sister. And Matt's like, it's not a very nice area, but that's where I grew up and I work to help others who can't afford legal services. So then the concern is that he doesn't make a lot of money. And Morris is very concerned as well. He goes, you're going to need money if you're going to raise kids in the LA. And I'm like, whoa. I did not think Daredevil says what we do. I did not, or we're thinking, I did not think the conversation was going to go that way. And that's when Jen slips, Dad, he's just stayed for a week. Like, relax. And Morris is like, I'm telling you now, every conversation is going to go that way. So buckle up. And I was afraid how they were going to play this was like, Matt Murdock going to basically run off. But he actually puts his hand on Morris's shoulder and laughs with him. So like the body language is like, oh, okay, and I'm like, whoa, they're going to do this. And then he leans into Jen and he's like, I could use a co-counsel here. And she's like, welcome to my life. I can't believe they did that. So, and then Bruce shows up and they're all like, hey, Bruce, what's up? Because he's family. He goes, hey, everyone, I know I've been away on SKAR for a while. I'll tell you all about it. But first, I have someone here that I would like you to meet. This is my son, SKAR. And I was like, they did it. They did it. They did it. They paid it off in a Disney Plus asset. Just like back with Loki season 1 at the end, they introduced, okay, spoilers for that too, He Who Remains or Kang. And a lot of people were floored when they did that in Loki because they were like thinking that Disney Plus was just going to be softball stuff. How much of it was going to tie into the movies? Well, duh, they introduced the big freaking bad for the next 2 phases at the end of Loki, which was amazing. And we learned a ton about the big bad and what drives him and what's going to alter the universe moving forward for them, going into what we now know is going to be the multiverse saga. Blaze said, SKAR, I know. And then says that 70s style extended dream sequence idea is something I need in my life. Well, I'm a kid from the 70s, so and I remember the Incredible Hulk being on TV. That was also one of my husband's most favorite TV shows and ever. I liked it. He loved it. Loved it. So here we go. We're introducing SKAR, who multiverse saga or not, is going to be important to the whole Hulk storyline going forward. So Jennifer meets her nephew. And Daredevil says, wow, your family. And so she's very shocked, like everyone else is. So now we have a scene change. It's the final scene. She's going up on the courthouse steps, and you have the same courthouse step reporter that we had in episode 1, who kind of inadvertently named her She-Hulk, I guess without meaning to. He confirms for the audience what we need to know, that she's been cleared of all her criminal charges. She's going up in a suit with her attaché case. She's looking very sharp. I'm going to guess it's a Luke Jacobson number. She's not wearing, a men's big and tall suit anymore. So you see that her character arc, at least for the season, is concluded. She's embraced both Jen and She-Hulk, and she's looking polished, like she respects herself. Remember, initially, Mallory Book was roasting her for the mannish suit. She really only seemed to have like 1 or 2 suits. And she looked like a football player defending against a DUI claim. You need to dress like you respect yourself. Jen didn't 100%, as much as this wasn't so much the reluctant hero storyline, she didn't 100% want to blend the two personas. And so wasn't putting a lot of energy into it. But now you can see it this final episode. She's in this polished purple number. It looks good against her skin. She ties it into the attache case. She's back to work. If her license was revoked, it got reinstated. I don't know if she's back with GLK and H yet. She probably is. Holden Holloway factored into her story all the way into the cosmic storyline, where she was part of the Magistrati in the comics. And I have in the playlist that I linked down below for all my She-Hulk stuff, reactions and edited videos, I talk about how the ad trailer that they did at the very end, there was a very powerful Easter egg that they laid down. And I'm like, ooh, later on, they are going to do this. So, Wongers, I know. Oh, I know. We had Wongers show up. Well, that was, yes, you're right. That's at the very last scene. I lied. So her going into the courthouse and the reporter confirming to us that all the charges have been dropped. She's back. She's going into her case, we presume, with Todd Phelps and Intelligentsia. And so she says, all polished, knowing the cameras are on her. She's fine with that. She goes, people like Todd Phelps have to be held responsible for their actions. The message that we're sending is that if you attack, harm, or harass innocent people, I'm coming for you. And so, of course, fair question. The reporter is like, do you mean in the courtroom or as a superhero? And she says both. This is important because, again, it reconfirms she has finished both the internal hero's journey that resolved 2 episodes ago, really largely. And now the external hero's journey, she's come out and she's conquered the big bad, at least for her season. So that's important for her to confirm. She's willing to do both and can do it interchangeably. And then, of course, playing on one of the strings or tropes that we had a couple episodes ago when she was being interviewed, and as they cut to the break, it wasn't this guy, I don't think, but as they cut to the break, they were like, oh, when we come back, She-Hulk is going to share her exercise and diet routine. And she's like, what? Because that had nothing to do with what they were discussing. That is not a good segue, but it was a great statement on, in real life, when you have a woman who's an influencer, the influence and the platform that she has might have nothing to do with diet, exercise, or looks. But for some reason, because she's female, we all need to know these things, right? So now we're playing on that trope one more time because the interviewer, the news reporter is like, now tell our viewers, whose look are you wearing to court today? And she's like, okay. And she just leaves. And he's like, the typical diva of law herself. And I'm all, really? She's a diva because she doesn't want to focus on that. So then we go through the end credit scenes. Besides the standard ones that have been there from episode to episode, I love that they have one of Emil looking worried. He's got protective armor on the throat of Princess Silkfeather, who he said was his favorite chicken. Because don't forget, the Dracula looking guy is like, oh, make the tea with chicken blood. So I thought that was funny. Then you have the Kevin AI wearing the Kevin Feige type hat that he would wear. And he's reading a classic She-Hulk comic, Savage She-Hulk. Then there's another one with Todd in chains in court because she's going after him civilly for his money and criminally as well. And you still see her in the purple suit that she wore at the end. So she was going into, I guess, a criminal hearing because he's in chains. Or maybe, if he's in jail, she can still sue him civilly and they can make arrangements to bring him out of jail for a civil suit. I've seen that happen through the years. And the men in the audience they look to be like members of Intelligentsia with Josh there. And he's like in flop sweats, which is perfect. So we do get a stinger scene here. Yay. But it is Wongers coming to visit. Blaze, I love it. Wongers coming to visit Emil because he's back in the Supermax prison where he started in episode 1. He's sitting on the floor. He's all relaxed. He's got his white Crocs there again. Oh my gosh. And Wong shows up and Emil's like, you took your time. And so, he goes through the portal with Wong and asks about the guest policy at Comertage. So it's my guess he's just going to go off and stay there. Which, so Jennifer got what she wanted of Kevin, to have that character take accountability for his actions. But lest you think that that move was very two-dimensional, oh no, it's not, because he already had his, exit strategy in his back pocket. He knew how to contact Wong, and he got out of there. So I love that. Will Emil show up in the Thunderbolts? God, I hope so. I hope so. And I also agree with Rob from Comics Explained. They're not going to give you everything about Thunderbolt. So I think that Emil might factor in and join them later to be their version of the Hulk. And it would make sense because you have anti-heroes. Like Ghost makes sense. She was technically a bad guy, but she was doing what she did to survive. And what happened to her wasn't her fault. I love the Contessa. Oh my God. And Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Oh, their casting is always so great. Always so great. So I love her as Val, and they show her as part of the team. Everyone that they have on there is good, and they all fill the roles that you would have seen on an Avengers, and they're kind of like a version of the Avengers, going off to do things that either the Avengers don't want to do, or probably wouldn't be a good idea to send them. I don't think this is so much of a Suicide Squad, but we'll see how this happens, because I see a lot of the people on there and they're not doing jail time and getting time shaved off their sentence. And you know what? DCEU can have something. It's okay that they have the Suicide Squad. Thanks, I subbed. You did a really great breakdown. Thank you, Blaze. Welcome to the family. Mama loves all her peeps. Come on. So I do at least weekly content, and more as I can. Because I am an attorney by day. So it's almost 9. I kind of have to jet too. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. I know She-Hulk's done for now. They're going to bring her back on other things. I will go back and break down the Matt Murdock series that was originally on Netflix that is here now. A lot of it is canon where it's not going to match up or dovetail perfectly. It won't be. I love the new spin that they're putting on him. I'm going to have a whole edited video as to why. I love it. So when my weeks are more light, I can do more edited content here. Make sure you also go to the Stacey Storino channel, Stacey, last name Storino, Storin, as in Nancy O. If you do content marketing as an entrepreneur, we're all about conversion-based content marketing over there. That channel has long been a predecessor of this one, but I'm glad you're here. So make sure you sign up and click the bell notification and select all, so that when I go live, sometimes impromptu, sometimes not, you can catch me live or be there on the replay. And we will get as many edited videos as we can out on this channel, with a good one a week on the Stacey Storino channel too. But that one has a ton of playlists that are very important if you're marketing on TikTok, if you're marketing on Instagram, if you're doing content marketing in general. Why isn't it converting? Why aren't people going on my email list? Why aren't people buying my stuff? Believe me, I've been a conversion-based content marketing coach since 2013, really, as well as being an attorney, because it's fun. I just can't do law all day long. So I will talk to you guys later. And She-Hulk says bye. Bye, guys.